Hey everybody, this is Jacob Tucker and welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create an account in FCL, and this is going to be for Cadence 1.0, so it is super up to date. So to create an account, ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to be sending a transaction in FCL. And so because of that, we actually need to first walk through the actual transaction code, the Cadence 1.0 code to create an account. So it's actually pretty straightforward. So first we're going to create a transaction like this, and we're going to create a prepare statement. Again, this is all Cadence 1.0 syntax, where we need an authorized reference to borrow value and a borrow value account reference like that. Okay, so just to sort of take a step back and explain what creating an account is, it's essentially an account, a pre-existing account, signing a transaction to create a new one. So a pre-existing account is going to pay to create a new one. Now, to create a new one, we actually need a public key. And what it's going to do is the existing account is going to add any public key you want to the new account, right? And that's going to be its key on that new account, right? And so in order for that account to sign transactions or anything, the associated private key with the public key that we're adding will have to be used to sign that transaction, right? So we need to actually pass in a public key here, and if that's confusing to you, don't worry, it'll make sense throughout this video. But we need to pass in a public key of our choosing, right? So that the associated private key will be the private key of the new account, okay? So in here, what we can do is say let key equals public key. And if you see my eyes darting to another screen, I am cheating because I have this prepared. Where the public key is public key. I keep doing typos. Decode hex like that. And the second thing we're going to have to do is signature algorithm, where it is a actual enum ECDSA-P256. Now, if you have a public key that was generated using these other signature algorithms, make sure to select those, but the default one is here, okay? So that should be good to go. Now we're getting an error here. Expected. Sorry. Yeah. So this should be signature algorithm like that. Okay. Cool. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're actually gonna create an account with that key. So let account equals account where the payer is the signer. So the person signing this transaction is going to be the one paying for it. Okay. And then to that newly created account, we're going to say account.keys.add the public key, which is the key that we made above, the hash algorithm, which is another enum, where it's a SHA-3 256. Now, again, if your key was created using a different hash algorithm, then definitely make sure to select that. And the weight is 1,000. So super quick, how keys work on Flow is you need a weight of 1,000 to sign a transaction. So, this key will obviously need to have a weight of 1,000 or it won't be able to sign a transaction on its own, okay? So boom, that is how we create an account in Cadence. So that is great. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to just send this transaction using an account, right? And so we have to actually do this on the emulator solely because, Cadence 1.0 is not live yet on testnet. So let's go ahead and do it on our emulator. So first of all, let's just make a function called create account like that. And we will start the emulator after I write out the code. So let's just say const public key equals, and we need a public key. So in order to do that, let's go to our terminal and let's write flow keys generate -- network equals emulator. Now you will put, testnet or mainnet if you're doing this in a sort of live example, or for whatever network you're doing it for, right? So flow keys generate -- network equals emulator, and we're going to send that, and it gives us a public and a private key. So let's just take the public key here and paste that into this public key variable. Now remember, you'll have to save this private key somewhere because that's going to be the private key for the new account, right? Okay, awesome. So now let's just go saying const transaction ID equals await mutate, and we're actually going to be sending a transaction with FCL now. And actually, before we do that, we have to first say, I'll keep this here. We have to say npm init like that. And then you can just click enter a bunch of times just because I'm in a new project, right? That'll create a package.json for us. And then we can say npm install @flow/FCL. So we need @flow/FCL to actually run the transaction. You probably already have that set up in your project. I just wanted to start from scratch because, I didn't know if people were starting from 0 or not. But there we go. So now we can actually import mutate. Let's just go ahead and do that. Up here, import mutate from @flow/FCL. Perfect. Okay. Awesome. So now that we have done that, let's just go and say cadence, and the cadence is actually the cadence code that we wrote right here. So let's just literally just go ahead and copy and paste that, so it's super easy, right? Then the next thing we have to add is args. So args, argt, I'm going to pass in arguments to this transaction, where the first argument is literally just the public key above, and that is a t.string, and that's the only argument we're going to pass in. Okay, so now that we have our argument set up, we have to do a couple more things. We have to put a payer, a proposer, and a authorizations, which is an array of authorizations. This part of the video I'm not going to go too in depth on because what we're going to be doing is sending this transaction on a Node.js server or whatever. And so we actually need a pre-existing account that can sign this transaction. I just made a video before this one. So literally, if you go to the video before this one, it's called, I think, sending a transaction with a non-custodial account. So you can go into that video. It covers this whole sign.js file here and sending a transaction. That's not the purpose of this video, so I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is, first of all, we have to go ahead and do flow init, which makes a flow.json here. And we're doing that because we're going to start the emulator now and actually try and run this transaction, right? So really quick, in this sign.js file, I'm just going to put the private key for the existing account, right, which is just the one that comes with the emulator automatically. Here, in a real scenario, you would just put the private key of whatever account you want to be signing this transaction, and the address of it as well, right? Okay. So, but again, I'm not going to go in depth on that because I have a whole video on this part, so just go to that. Okay, so what we can do now is just to put signer here. Signer and signer, and this should be good. Okay, so now once that transaction actually goes through, we can console.log the transaction ID like that. We can also say, now that we have the transaction ID, what we can do is we can wait for it to execute so we can actually get info about the new account. So we can do say const transaction result equals await transaction, transaction ID dot once executed. So what that's going to do is just this transaction result is going to be returned once the transaction is executed, which is the final stage of the transaction. We also have to import a transaction here. Okay, cool. So once we've done that, then we can just go and console.log the transaction result. And more specifically, which is kind of cool to see, we can actually get the address of the newly created account as well. So we can say const events equals transaction result. We can say const event equals events.find. And what we're doing right now is we're searching through all the events in that transaction and getting the event that holds the data of the new account's address. So event.type.includes, and the event's name is account created. So we're just searching for that one. And then we're just going to say const account address equals event.data.address. And then we can console.log the account address. Okay. And by the way, if all this is confusing to you, if I'm going too fast, don't worry. I'm going to put a link in the description to a completed example of all of this. So it will be really helpful to see that, okay? So now that we've done that, that's really cool. We can just go ahead and call the create account function. But the last thing we have to do is actually hook up our FCL here to emulator, or in your case to testnet or mainnet, whatever you're using. So access node.api. And then we're going to have to put a link here. So first of all, let's just go ahead and start up the emulator. So flow emulator start. Again, you might be doing this on testnet or mainnet, so it might not apply to you. But cool, so that is there. So now I'm just going to look here for, I believe it's on port 8080. So I'm just going to say HTTP localhost 8080, like that. All right, so let's go ahead and run this function. So let me just go ahead and start that emulator again. Then in another tab, I'm going to say node main.js. Oh, it's complaining because of import statements. Hold on. I'm just going to say type module. That should fix that error. Okay. And it didn't. Did you mean to import sign.js? Oh. Let's go back to here. If I think I put sign.js for some reason. I don't know. These are just weird errors in my local system. Oh, I also forgot to install elliptic and SHA-3, which are both... Oh, npm I, elliptic, and SHA-3. These are both things in your in the sign.js file that we need to send transactions on a backend. So also make sure those are installed. Okay, so we should be able to say node main.js here. Oh, config is not defined. That is also because I forgot to import config. That should be it. Okay. Actually, I think it's because we need to put 8888. There we go. And so you can see we just ran the transaction and it worked perfectly. So here is the transaction ID, here is the transaction result, and here is the account address that was just created. So this is the newly created account address. That is awesome, and that concludes the video. So I hope that was helpful for you. And again, all this code is published very easily in the description, so you can take a look there. And I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.